What are my top rated books from 2021? I'm so glad you asked. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and today we're talking about my top rated books from 2021. Like, before we get into it, make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. I post every week and we talk about books on this channel, and like that's about it. So if you like listening to people talk about books, go ahead and hit the buttons so you don't miss anything. So before we get started, I know that we are like on the way to closing out 2022, but when I started my YouTube channel like a couple months ago, I was like, it's too late to do a favorite 2021. Wrong, it's never too late. It is never too late to talk about my favorite books. So yeah, today we are talking about books I gave 5 stars to in 2021. Now, they're just books that I read in 2021. They're not books that were necessarily published in 2021. So yeah, they're just books that I happened to read that year. And I made the list and I was so excited. Y'all, this list is long. Because I'm so stingy with my 5 stars, I was for sure thinking there was only going to be like 5 or 6 books on the list. There's 15 books on the list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into 2 parts. I'm going to do part 1 right now with you today, and then I don't know where part 2 is going to end up, but we'll get it in before the end of the year, I promise. So let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about half of my 5-star rated books from 2021. Alright, starting off nice and strong with Shiver by Allie Reynolds. This book blew me away. Oh my gosh. So we have a main character that is like ex-professional snowboarder. Like they used to do pipe snowboarding. She's a woman, which was like super cool to get like a female athletic perspective from it. So basically a couple years ago, like 10 years ago or something, they were all in their teens, a little group of them up doing competitive snowboarding. And so they were all on this mountain together doing competitive snowboarding and like falling in love and falling into like revenge friendship type things. Frenemies, if you will. Everything is like okay until one of the top snowboarders ends up missing. Like no one can find her, and then it all starts coming out that like everyone kind of had beef with her, but she's gone. Like they don't have a body, they don't have anything. So flash forward to now, which is like 10 years later, and they all get an email saying they want to do like a reunion up on the mountain and like a memorial service or whatever. So they all go up there, and then when they get up there they find out that they don't know who sent the message. Blizzard, lights go off, they're stranded, they're trying to figure out who brought them all there and why they brought them all there. This book it jumped between past and present of like what really happened to them on that mountain when they were younger and like what's happening now and why they're all there. It was just fast-paced, exciting. It was like a mystery thriller, but you're like stuck up on the mountain in like a snowstorm, and there was like a little bit of a love interest in there. The reason I will never forget this book and why I got 5 stars, man, the last like 5 pages, just when you thought you had it all figured out, just when you thought you knew, you didn't. I didn't. Wow. Read this one, okay? The next book I'm going to talk about is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. This book was really interesting to me. If you like Norse mythos, if you like any kind of like mythology and stuff like that, this was really good. It was basically Neil Gaiman took all of these stories from like Thor and Odin and Loki and the rest of the Norse gods and broke them down into very digestible small stories that were just fun. Like it teaches you all about like origins of the planets and everything, of the realms, and like breaking down all these little stories that build Norse mythology. I loved it. Like Neil Gaiman is just such a great storyteller. Like if you haven't read any of his stuff, like please just pick up anything by him. But this just really, it gave me all the vibes. Like I couldn't put it down. I thought the little stories were so engaging, and I love the way that he wrote them, so nothing was boring. And I felt so much happiness from this book. So yeah. The next book on my list is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. People have been buzzing about this book, right? And there is a really good reason. Okay, this book just shook me. All right, it's marketed as a horror book, and as I was reading it, I was like, is it? But then when I really got into it, y'all, it just scared the bejesus out of me, okay? So we have this group of young native boys or indigenous boys that went on a hunting trip together. Something went terribly wrong on the hunting trip. And you flash forward to like 10, 20 years later, I'm not quite sure now that I'm thinking on it, and they start getting these weird visits and strange things start happening to them. And then they each start dying. It's wild. It's like if you took indigenous folklore and brought it to life. Because, you know, a lot of folklore is like kind of happy and it has like an underlying message and stuff, but some folklore is terrifying. Okay, you have those folklore stories that are just like frightening. This was one of them. And it did take me a minute. Like, I really had to sit with this book after I'd read it for like a couple weeks and really like think on it before I was like, that's messed up. That's so messed up. Wow. It's a thinker, okay, for sure. But there are a lot of really great gore moments. Really great gore writing. Like, it shocked me. It blew me away. If you're on the fence about reading this book, just read it. You will not regret picking this one up. I promise. The next book I'm going to talk about is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. It's another indigenous book. And it's so good. Oh my god. Okay. So this book follows 5 indigenous children that grew up in reform schools, I think they're called. Now I cannot remember what they're called. But it was when the Catholic priests and nuns would go around and collect all the indigenous children and take them to the schools and cut all their hair and strip them of their culture, and it was extremely traumatizing. And this is a type of generational trauma that's just continued throughout the indigenous communities, and we hear more and more about these schools recently as more and more hidden graveyards are found across the US and Canada. So yes, this story is about 5 indigenous children that grow up in these schools, and then what happens to them after they leave and trying to find a place in society and move on with their lives, and through the trauma that they incurred while living there. It's breathtaking, heartbreaking. If you're one of those people that likes trauma books, I like reading about trauma. I don't know what that says about me, but let's not get into it. I enjoy reading trauma books, and so this book, to know that it was based on historical happenings and to just slightly understand or get a peek at what some people have had to deal with in their lives, and it was wonderful. It was just everything I didn't know I wanted out of a book is this book. Like, it blew me away. And the way that Michelle Good was able to write the emotional responses was just, read it. Read it. The next book on my list is Skye Falling by McKenzie. I have talked about Skye Falling in my Pride Books episode because I love this book. I'll never stop recommending this book to anybody. Okay, so we have Skye, who's kind of like has a nomadic lifestyle, and she stops back home, and at some point in her life she donated her eggs to a friend of hers so that she could have a baby. Well, it turns out that friend has passed away, and the egg that she gave away and became a baby tracks her down and is like, hey, so I'm kind of your child, and you're kind of my mother. And she ends up being this like 12-year-old girl that's just full of everything. Like, she's everything. And Skye has to kind of decide what she's going to do. And she has this really hard outer shell because of years of trauma from her childhood and things like that. And she has to decide what she's going to do with this situation and if she wants to move forward or not. The relationships in this book are just so great. We have so much representation here too. We have lots of rep in the LGBTQ plus community, and then we have lots of rep in POC, BIPOC characters, just in the emotional range that me and McKenzie was able to get was just spectacular to me. I absolutely love this book. It touches on so many wonderful topics, and I loved it. I loved it. The next book I'm going to talk about is Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This was a very interesting book for me. It's not what I traditionally read, I guess. The reason it was on my list is because it's very high ranked as a POC BIPOC book, and I was like, yeah, it sounds good. Let's pick it up and read it. And it was just a bombshell. Like, we have a main character who is a POC young woman, and she is a nanny for a white family in a very, like, affluent neighborhood. And basically she's just doing this because it's a lot of money, and she's still trying to figure out, like, what she wants to do with her life. She's in her young 20s, and it's a great gig, so she does it. Well, one night she gets a call, like, it's an emergency. Can you come take our daughter out of the house for a few hours? And she's like, I mean, yeah, I guess I can. You know, so she goes, she takes the daughter out of the house, and they just decide to go to the grocery store to just mill around, waste time until they're able to go back home. And while at the grocery store, she gets confronted by an older white woman that is insisting that she kidnapped that child, obviously, because the little girl is white and the nanny is not white. And it ends up being this huge thing. It gets filmed. Security comes over. It's a big deal. And she just wants to move on from this moment. She's like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to engage about it. Let's just all move on. This story puts a looking glass on boundaries, basically. Personal boundaries. How people engage with people of color, women of color specifically, how white people put themselves into situations that are none of their business, quite frankly. And it's also a journey of our main character learning how to say, you know what, no. It's not my job to do this work for you. It's not my job to walk you through this and hold your hand. It's not my job to do any of that. It's my job to be me and do me. This book just like, wow. There's just so much happening in this book. We have a lot of really important conversations in this book, a lot of really important topics. I think if you consider yourself a white ally to the POC and BIPOC community, this is definitely a book that you should read. I think that it's one of those books I will never forget. And there's a lot of really great moments in this book. A lot of really great teachable moments in this book. And yeah, just put it in your arsenal, for real. It was just a lot. But it was great. The last book I'm going to talk about today is Entropy by Riley Ashby. This is an independent author. This is the first book of hers that I've read. Holy crap, it blew me away. So we're getting a dual perspective in this book. Now, I'm going to be upfront and tell you it is spicy, okay? And it's good. But it's a kidnapping story. Basically, like, it has a lot of, like, mafia vibes and then, like, our main male character kidnaps our main female character. There's also a lot of like stalker vibes in there. There's a lot of sex in this book. There's a lot of backstory that ends up going into this book that makes the tension just ratchets it up like right away. And then we start to see this kind of Stockholm syndrome happening between our two main characters. And I know what you're thinking, like, Alex, Stockholm syndrome's not sexy. Okay, yeah, but she wrote it in a way that was. She wrote it in a way that made me want to be kidnapped, okay? Just let me be. Never in my life did I think that I would be, like, I would like to be kidnapped. Riley Ashby made me think that I wanted to be kidnapped. The good thing about this book is that our main female character is not some helpless, like, little victim or anything. She actually has like a lot of oomph, a lot of personality, and a lot of her own defenses. And I love that Ashby wrote it that way. Like, I love that she gave her a super strong personality, and she also made her like really fragile but physically able to hold her own. It was just a great combination on the female character. Like, I was so impressed with the way that she wrote that. And then, you know, our main male character, man, I loved him. He also had like a complicated past. There were no stones unturned in this. Like, this is one of those instances when it was like, there was so much delicate, intricate planning that went into this book, and you can just see it. You can just see the amount of work that went into this book to make it the way that it is. And I was so happy that I read this. So this is available on Amazon if you would like to read it, and I highly encourage you, if you like smutty reads, this one's exceptional. Just the amount of work that she did, exceptional. Okay, well, that's where I'm gonna cut off for today. That's about half of the list of my 5-star reads from 2021. Y'all, I'm getting so excited about October. I'm getting all my lists planned out. I'm getting all my content planned out. I'm so excited. So I've been seeing so much on like BookTube and Book Talk and Book Twitter and everything about like everybody reading their fall reads and stuff. Yeah, I don't really get into fall reads, but I do get into horror reads in the fall. So stay tuned for horror content coming up. I'm so excited. So yeah, if you liked what you saw here today, if you want to stick around and see what else I've got going on my channel and what's coming up in the next couple months, make sure you hit all the buttons down below so you know when I'm posting. And on that note, I will see you all next time. Bye!